What is up, sports geeks? It's your host, Josh, here back with another episode, joined by Alec, as always. We have some fantasy players you need to be starting for week 3 here. Crazy, we are 2 weeks in. Perfect way to start this here. Let's recap week 2. I have the stats in front of us here. So we had 7 guys we told you needed to start. We had Amari Cooper to start. We thought that was going to be a bounce back week for him. That one was the rough one.
Yep.
Clearly, there's no chemistry between him and Deshaun Watson. Jerome Ford was the other one that really the only other loss we had here. Jerome Ford averaged 9 yards per carry and only touched the ball 7 times. I'm no coach, but that doesn't sound very efficient to me. Doesn't sound smart. And then we get into the really good stuff here. We had Pollard, who was projected 10 and put up 15 in PPR. Brian Robinson projected 11, put up 14 in PPR. J.K. Dobbins projected 10, put up 20 in PPR. Chris Godwin projected 13, put up 24 in PPR. And then J-Mo projected 11 and put up 15. Great week overall. The Ford one, I think, is really, really unlucky. Deontay Foreman comes out of left field and takes touches from him. Cooper, I think, was just an unlucky read. But I think the Ford one, he should have been getting more touches. Enough said about that, though. Send it over to you for your first player today.
Yeah, so my first player today, I'm kind of going back to the well here. I'm going with Tony Pollard. So I wanted to pull up the stat last week, another guy who didn't get a lot of touches against his defense. So last week, so to put it in perspective, Tennessee's playing Green Bay this week.
Mm-hmm.
So Green Bay's defense Green Bay last week put up a ton of rushing yards, like 250, something like that. Their rushing defense is not good. Jonathan Taylor last week had 12 carries for 103 yards, almost 9 yards a carry, or a little over. Yeah. So I think that Tony Pollard this week is going to have a big week, especially even with him. So, he's projected 15 this week on ESPN, which is, what he got last week, basically what he got week 1.
Yeah.
I really like his upside because he's going to get at least 3 to 4 catches a week.
Mm-hmm.
That's 3 to 4 points right there without ever scoring. So I really, really like Tony Pollard this week, especially even if they're in a negative script, it's fine. He's going to get receptions.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. Like you said, going back to the well, we were on Pollard last week. I'm with you here. We're going with him this week because I like what you're bringing up with the receiving too, because I coming into the season, we thought Pollard was the rusher and Tyjae Spears was the receiver. That's not how it is. Pollard is like the bell cow for them, and Tyjae Spears is when Pollard needs a sub. And so I think that Pollard is like bound to be in the 15 to 20 touches a game. And if you're locking a running back in for that, and the way where he was drafted at, he's a flex play. If that, he probably started on your bench beginning of the season.
Yeah,
these guys needs to be starting this week, I think.
And I also think for him, he's kind of going back to that role that he not as good of offense as he was in Dallas with Zeke. Mm-hmm. Kind of the same role. Like he's getting that 15 to 20 touches a game. Yep. I know it was a little bit less in Dallas, but I think his touches weren't like his last year in Dallas, where he was coming off the injury. He was coming off the ACL. He wasn't as healthy, and the touches weren't as quality. I think his touches now are a little more quality. So.
Yeah, I think another thing too that could come into play is we've seen how bad Will Levis has played and just stupid he's looked. And Brian Callahan has not been shy to bring that up, right? I mean, you saw the video of him saying, I think it was, "What the hell are you doing?" Right?
Yeah.
Maybe it was a little more vulgar than what I just said, but like on the one pick where he's like falling to the ground, or the fumble, he's falling to the ground, throws it backwards. Terrible play. But I think kind of the result of this might be trying to make so many hero plays, make the simple plays, which results typically in shorter dump offs. I wouldn't be surprised if Pollard caught 5 or 6 passes this week, and it's just Levis not trying to throw it into double coverage, so he just immediately checks it down to Pollard.
Yep.
So going over to my first player, we're going to the back of the well here too, and I don't think we're getting burned twice back to back with him. I'm not going to Amari Cooper, but I am going with the Browns' Jerome Ford. And the matchup that we had last week, we liked, and for a good reason. Averaged 9 yards a carry, and Foreman was a lot less productive. I don't know why Stefanski did this. I don't know. I think the way Ford ran last week, it lit a fire under his ass. That's for sure. It was what it looked like, and he ran really well. But the biggest thing, the main reason I like him is because he's playing the Giants defense. This Giants defense couldn't stop the run if it was you and I back there. That's
Oh,
probably true.
man.
But realistically, this Giants defense cannot stop the run at all. And I think that's the exact reason why we run Brian Robinson last week, is because you're playing this Giants defense. You're going to be in a positive game script, and this team just can't stop the run at all. They're going to be in even more of a positive game script. I think there's no way in the world Daniel Jones is going to put up more than 15 points on this team. And I think Jerome Ford, if you give him 12 plus carries, I think he's really productive this week. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's back in that 15, 12 to 17, but really lingers around that 15-point range at all.
Yeah, he should be, he's one of those guys where he can break off a long run really at any time. We've seen that over the last year and a half after Nick Chubb got hurt. Yep. Even that game that Nick Chubb did get hurt, he had that like 70-yard touchdown run, like right off the bat. You're like, dang, who's this Jerome Ford guy?
Yeah.
We knew him because, we went to UC. He went to the University of Cincinnati. But he's a legit running back. And if you're averaging 9 yards a carry and your backup comes in, has 14 rushes for 42 yards, for average 3 yards a carry, the talent's going to win out. And you're eventually going to get more touches. So I like him this week to bounce back.
Yeah, absolutely. Me as well. I'm going to go ahead and go with the second one here. And this one is the other guy. I promise I'm not going back to well on all three of my guys. But this one I am going back to well on. But he hit last week, and it was Jameson Williams for the Lions. I think this is something that Amon-Ra goes down towards the end of the game last week. I know that Goff attempted 55 passes. I can promise you that's not going to happen this week, especially with Arizona's front seven. But Arizona's offense compared to Detroit's defense, which is a little bit banged up. I don't think Ancelotti's playing. Arizona's going to put up points, and Detroit's not going to get blown out. Those are two things I know that's going to happen, which in return means Detroit's going to put up points. And if Amon-Ra I know he practiced in full today. He's going to play. If he's even remotely banged up at all, Jameson Williams is going to put in double-digit targets like he did this past week. He put up 9 targets in week 1. He has such a boom ability as well. His upside is through the roof. Last week, he put up what did I say here? He put up 15 points-ish. Yeah, 14 points and didn't have a touchdown. That's great. Week 1, he had a touchdown. And the other thing, too, that I saw from him, last point on him here, is that he's a deep ball receiver. He has that threat, no doubt. First play of the game was a pick going to him. Second play of the game was a 50-yard bomb to him, right? Yeah. And so he has that big playability. We've always known. He started to develop everything else in his game. There's one specific example, catches the ball over the middle. It's a 5-yard stop route, catches it, turns upfield, gets 15 out of it. Those are routes that if he starts to run and do well at, his upside is through the roof in fantasy and in football, but mainly here in fantasy.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love everything you said about that. I'm going to kind of piggyback off you real quick on on a guy that's a big play guy, kind of like we just said. I'm going to go Rasheed Shaheed here. 2 long touchdowns, 1 in week 1, 1 in week 2. I actually think his volume, so just looking at his stats the first couple of weeks, I just want to get this right. He only had 5 targets week 1, 4 targets in week 4. They were also blowing both those teams out almost immediately. I think his targets are actually going to be probably around 7 to 8 in this offense per game. I think Olave is great. Their tight ends are not that strong. I mean, Foster Moreau is not something that you're kind of like scared about. Yeah. And also like kind of with this, it's Kubiak, which is a part of like the Shanahan system.
Yep.
Kamara is always going to get his targets. And it's mainly based off 2 receivers. Yep. And it's going to be Olave and it's going to be Shaheed. Shaheed is looking fantastic. I'm not a PFF like truther. I am a PFF truther when you watch a quarterback, if he's playing well or not. Yeah. When you watch a running back, I don't really know, like when I'm watching routes, if a receiver is doing well or not. I trust PFF. His PFF grades are amazing this year. So they're loving him. So, I really like him this week.
Yeah. The other thing too, I think that kind of goes along with what you're saying. Carr attempted 16 passes last week. So four targets in week 2. That's a 25% target share.
I didn't know he only. I actually swear to God, I didn't even know that. He had
as you were talking about it, I was pulling it up real quick to check it out too. And yeah, Olave had 6, Shaheed had 4, Kamara had 3, and then Taysom Hill and Jauan Johnson each had 1. So literally, Kamara is always on the field. Olave is always on the field. Take them away. The only person that's getting targets consistently is Shaheed. which means he's running a route on every single passing play.
Yeah.
And the way that Derek Carr's played, yes, give it to me.
If you're telling me that Shaheed, and I don't know if 25% target share is, if they're going to throw 40 times, I don't know if he's going to get 10 targets a game, but even if it's 22, 23% for a flex, for a low end flex that you could get this guy for, he might be on some waiver wires.
Yeah.
He's fantastic as a second flex.
Yes. Yeah, him and JMO were drafted in that exact same range. The exact same range. You're drafting him as a wide receiver. They're in that wide receiver 45 to 50 range. I remember this, right? And that's a wide receiver like 5 that you're drafting. Yeah. And they need to be starting for you this week because I think
there's no way
is just through the roof. Both of these guys have, without touchdowns, upside. You throw the opportunity for a touchdown in there.
Yeah, and with these guys, you're playing them as probably your second flex. So it's like if they're getting you 10 points a week, 10, 11, 12, 13 points a week in your second flex, you're taking that every time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, especially if you're in a 12-man league that's deep on benches, this is one that, these are plays that you have to be making here.
Yeah.
But, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take my third here. This is somebody that going back to the well to week 1. So I guess I did lie. We are going back to the well a little bit, but I think that's kind of the pool of players we're looking for. I'm not going to tell you to start Marvin Harrison Jr. You should be starting him no matter what. I'm not going to tell you to start Chris Olave. You should be starting him no matter what. These are kind of those flex players that you need to be starting. And I'm going to Zamir White. Playing the Carolina Panthers, the exact same reason I was on Dobbins last week. It's the Panthers and the Giants have just horrendous rushing defenses. They cannot stop the run to save their lives. And it's why we were on Dobbins, Brian Robinson last week. It's why I'm on Ford. It's why we're on Zamir White here. I understand Zamir White has not been very efficient, but I do think that they just haven't been in great game scripts for it either. And this is a bad team with you're going to be in positive game script and you have a terrible rushing defense. You pair those things together, I think this is set up to just be a Zamir White 100-plus yard week.
Yep. I love Zamir White this week. I really love anybody that's playing the Panthers.
Yes.
That's kind of the vibe. It's going to kind of be like I know we don't talk about really defense streaming that much. Kind of the same vibe with that. I know it's different with Andy Dalton. I think they're actually going to look a lot better this week.
Yeah.
But from a game script perspective and the odds are Zamir White's getting 15, 20 carries.
Yep. Yeah.
So
and if you're going to give me 15 or 20 carries against Carolina's rushing defense, I'm locking you in for 75-plus yards, comfortably. Like if you have a bad game, 75-plus yards.
Yep. Yeah. I totally agree, and probably a touchdown.
Yes. Yeah. And well, that's the other thing too with Dalton is he can sling the ball better than Bryce Young, and I think they'll move the ball better. He's also going to throw a pick or two
for sure.
And so I think that the Vegas is going to have plenty of situations in which they can score, probably taking the ball over in positive field position, in which I think Zamir White's touchdown upside is going to be larger this year or this week than it has been in previous.
And I want to touch on something on Zamir White real quick. Say he goes off this week, which we think he will.
Yeah.
It could be a sell high for Zamir White. And the reason I say this is because the Raiders aren't going to have too many other games this year where they're in a positive game script like they could be this week. I know they beat the Raiders the Ravens last week. I still don't think this team's very good. So if say Zamir White goes off I'm not a Raiders hater. I'm just saying you're not making the playoffs in the AFC with Gardner Minshew. I don't think it's going to happen. So if you could try to sell high on Zamir White this week, say he goes off, I think that he could be a candidate for that. Just based off probably the game script the rest of the year alone, because he's not a big, catcher of the football.
Yes, absolutely agreed there. Send it over to you. I want to hear your third and final player here as we wrap this up.
Yeah, so I kind of have a deeper sleeper here. I'm looking at this right now, currently on ESPN. He's only rostered in 24% of leagues. It's Jauan Jennings, and that's up 23.8%. So he was only rostered in 0.5 before this week, which you shouldn't be rostering this guy anyway, probably. But it's Jauan Jennings for the 49ers. So I did a little digging. So in week 1, he had 5 targets. He had 5 targets for 64 yards and no touchdowns, but he had 11.4 PPR points week 1. That was when Deebo Samuel took 15 snaps out of the backfield, and it was just him and Ayuk. Deebo's out this week. I think that's probably the floor is at least 5 targets this week for Jauan Jennings.
Yep, I would completely agree with that.
And
With the
they're so
upside
efficient.
of with the upside of 10 or 12 and going for 100+ yards.
Of course,
in the
because,
Shanahan offense, you always have
and
that.
Ayuk's still making his way back.
Mhm.
Jauan Jennings was there for the whole preseason.
Yep.
Pearsall's still out. I don't think the other rookie from like Arizona, he's like 5'8". I don't like I'm like 170. He's a punt returner. Is it Cowing?
Oh, yep.
So I don't think he's going to get major play. They usually don't play rookies in San Francisco anyway. But I really liked Jauan Jennings this week.
Yeah, no, I love that as well. And it's definitely like that's one that's like start him if he's not picked up at the absolute minimum, pick him up, right?
Yeah.
And also, I mean, some of these too, like I'm not telling you to go start we're not telling you to go start Jerome Ford over like Rasheed Rice if Rasheed Rice is in your flex. Obviously be intelligent about this, but there's and by all means go drop a comment on the TikTok or the YouTube shorts here. Happy to or this video. I mean, the TikTok is constantly kind of just reviewing different people's starts and sits and giving them advice, which is always a blast to do. But no, I absolutely love that. If he's available, pick him up. If you have him, really look into starting. I love that.
And this is like with all the injuries. I mean, there have been a long laundry list of injuries so far. If you need a second flex, even if you're really hurting and you need one flex, and you're desperate and you just need to you need a dart throw from the waiver wire, I would dart throw on Jauan Jennings this week.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So that's who we have for today. We have Jauan Jennings, Rasheed Shaheed, and Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
And then we have Jerome Ford, Jameson Williams, and Zamir White. So those are the 6 here. I think we're going 5 for 6. Last week we had a great week of our 7. Kind of going back to this, of our 7, we had 1 bust, 3 booms, 2 wins and a loss.
Yep.
So we went 5 for 7 last week with 3 of them booming. I love that. We have 6 of them this week. I've 4 of 6 I think are going to be really good. I'm feeling 3+ booms again this week as well. So
yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited this week. I was rooting. I wasn't only rooting for, it was weird. I wasn't only rooting for my fantasy teams this week. I was also rooting for our guys.
Yes, absolutely.
That we gave to the people.
Absolutely, me as well. So that's all we got for today. We'll be back next week. This week is just dropping the fantasy football one. Next week we'll have some NFL chats and then obviously more fantasy football content coming every week. But this has been the Sports Geeks podcast. They play, we talk. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.